Hi, thank you so much for listening to Joyscape Therapy Podcast. In order to earn a CE, listen here for the code words, then visit our website at www.joyscapetherapy.com/CEUS. You will enter the code words and your BACB info at checkout, then receive your certificate in 5 to 7 business days.
Hello, and welcome to the 5th episode of Joyscape Therapy Podcast, where we discuss everyday behaviors for everyday people. I'm your host, Maryssa McKenzie. I'm a BCBA, and today we have our awesome BCBA and mom of 2, boy mom, Sam Hightower.
Hello.
And today we're going to be offering this as a 1 continuing education credit. And as you know, Joyscape Therapy is an ACE provider. So join us as we create and dub this space the Journal Club Chronicles, where we take a related research topic, review it and its details, findings from that article, disseminate the research and how it applies to our work, our field, and the broader range of just everyday life. So I'm trying to make these concepts relatable, relevant, and educational. So without any further ado, let's dive into our topic today. Being a mom, managing BCBA and mom life. Sam Hightower.
Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be here today. A little nervous, but I'm excited to just chat with you, Maryssa.
You got this.
I am a BCBA, mom of 2, like Maryssa yeah. said. Also started an admin role at Joyscape Therapy, so wearing a few different hats, but loving it.
Nice. Yeah. So it's been like, just in general, give us kind of a view of like the decision to be admin, because you still have your certification.
Yes.
But just not using it clinically right now. But yeah.
So I came to Joyscape as admin, like we were talking about, and luckily our boss is amazing, and she let me know when I was hired that if I did decide I wanted to dive back into the clinical role, I'm more than welcome to. And so what I found works best for me right now is I have a tiny caseload of 2 people.
Oh, okay.
2 people, and then I get to also help lead the peer social skills group. So
you are using it clinically.
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
That's awesome.
No. Yeah, I definitely started not doing it, like at first it was no clinical, and then I was like, you know what, I miss this. I became a BCBA for a reason, I'm passionate about this. And I was able to find a balance where I wasn't feeling like I was draining my bucket more than filling it,
Yes.
So, anyways, it's been really great at Joyscape. Like, my previous company was amazing too. It was just, at that time, because my husband got his new job, I wasn't able to go in the field anymore. Mm-hmm. And because I had my own children, I had to, make a decision.
Yeah.
And
Share how old are your boys?
Yeah, so Maverick is 3.5, and Sterling is 1.5.
Wow.
Yeah. And believe it or not, we're thinking do we want to have another one?
Nice.
But we'll see. I don't know. They're a lot, but they are my whole world. So yeah.
Oh, nice. Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, that kind of leads us into. So we chose a topic that kind of broke down some different worker profiles, but let's introduce the article that we chose today, which was Finding Time Over Time, Longitudinal Links Between Employed Mothers, Work-Family Conflict, and Time Profiles. And this article is from Sumi Lee, Susan McHale, Anne Crouter, Leslie Hammer, and David Almeida. So just kind of give a brief summary. They sampled 440 employed mothers across 30 different extended care facilities. I think I have a note a little bit about that, extended care facilities, because it does add a different dynamic, right? Mm-hmm. To give direct care and then go home and be a mother, I think also adds, a lot. And they do mention that in the article. Mm-hmm. So those mothers were providing care in different facilities to other individuals. So there were nurse practitioners, registered nurses, nurse managers. And they categorized the mothers into person-centered latent profiles. So they had a work-oriented, which was basically the majority of time was spent at work, and the mothers perceived less time spent with their children. Parent-oriented was more time at home, more time with children, and there was a role balanced, which was an average of the two. So time between work and time with their children. And we should also share that this was a self-reported survey that was given to these mothers to kind of establish them within these profiles via questionnaire. So we know there are limitations with the self-reporting, just with recall, reflection, bias. So the goal of the study was to identify profiles of time use and perceived time. So Sam, just to kind of open up that conversation, right? Because I thought that was very interesting, is like time and perceived time, like one that's hard to measure, but also like, yeah, for you, how, I mean, especially now knowing too, you have like that clinical piece that you're working, although it's small. I know for me, even going between clients, it's challenging to shift.
Yep.
You know, because my mind is just there, it's present. And then when I shift to another session, it's like, okay, I need to kind of revamp, think about this learner profile. So for you, transitioning from admin to clinic to mom. So how is that? And the way you perceive your time, tell us a little about that.
Yeah, I think, well, also just to add into that, like working from home, it's another factor, because it's like impossible to leave your work at work, you know, because I'm home. But anyways, yeah, so at the beginning of the pandemic, when we were forced to shift into this work from home role, I had many other people, I had a really hard time leaving my work at work. And I remember a coworker, she told me, it was like such a simple strategy too. I was like, wow. She told me, you know, at the end of the day, I literally turn off my computer and I close it. And I was just like, oh, weird. I close my laptop, but I don't like ever turn it off.
Same.
You know?
Oh.
And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to start doing that, because like just the fact that I have to like repower it up and like wait for it to turn on.
The response effort.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's going to be too much work for me. And so I started doing that, and it was like so helpful. It was amazing. But then I think, just going back again to like the perception, how I was perceiving my time, I started like almost resenting work a little bit.
Ooh.
I think that's the right word, resenting, because I was noticing that like my husband at the time, he was able to spend so much time with the kids, and I wasn't really resenting him for it, because I was like, oh, what a great dad, spending time with them, you know, and but I was like resenting work, and you know, and not necessarily resenting clients, because I love them, you know, but it was just the fact that my time was being spent elsewhere was really annoying. You know? And as a new mom with toddlers, like you're like, oh, you want to spend time with them while they're little, you know? And so I think just having that in the back of my head all the time was really hard. But yeah, I'm trying to think. Did I answer? I think I answered.
Yeah, the BC time. Did you find like that, when did you notice that shift? Or are you still kind of in that mode at times and kind of in and out? What is it like now?
So now Marcus my husband, is working a new job where he's full-time traveling. And so that means that I'm now, you know, running the kids everywhere. Luckily my parents are crazy helpful. But yeah, so now I am finding it still pretty difficult to find some time, more for myself though. Like I think now I'm feeling I'm feeling a lot better about my time spent with my kids, and I feel a lot better about the effort and time I'm spending for work. Although I think like I think a lot of BCBAs are kind of type 1 personalities. So like we always want to be doing better than what we're doing. So that is just
look at the data.
Yeah, exactly. It's just a personal thing. But yeah, I think now it's just more about finding time for self-care that I'm struggling with the most. But
and how about those feelings of resentment? So like, you know, because I think it's very real, you know, not to tap too much personally into like your marriage.
Yeah.
But I think it's a very real feeling, right? Like a two-household parent or two-parent household, and the shifts, right? Just like you mentioned, like your husband had, a new job and now is traveling, versus from a few years ago or a year ago, maybe he was spending more time with the kids, and you had, you know, so just kind of those natural changes. And I think the article touches on that too, is like the shift and the transition from one worker profile into the other is also kind of a different dynamic within itself. So yeah, how about those feelings too of, you know, still trying to find balance within your relationship?
Yeah, Yeah, that is, it's a whole nother, we could talk for hours about that. No, but I'm very lucky to have, like, my husband's so supportive. He's an amazing dad. You know, like, the fact that the reason why I think we have such a hard time with it is because, like, we miss each other, you know? It's just, like, we're used to spending so much time together, and, like, and we weren't really expecting the shift to be so intense, you know? But, like, we both changed jobs, you know, like anyways, so I think the resentment was more towards, like, I don't know if it was even, like, who it was towards, to be honest, but I think it was just the fact that I had to work, like, all the time.
Yeah, you know, responsibilities in life.
Exactly. I was just kind of feeling sorry for myself, I guess, but I think, now, I think we're still working it out. I'd be interested if I answer this question, like, a few months from now, you know, like, how I'd be feeling. I started my own, I'm now seeing my own therapist, and, like, that's awesome. I see her today, actually, and I'm, like, looking forward to it.
And just like you were talking about the self-care piece, you know, like, I'm sure it's very hard. It's very hard even for me. So I help care for my mother. But it's even hard for me, just as a single person, to make time for myself. Yeah. And therapy, I also attend therapy. I think, you know, whatever suits you personally, individualized plan of support. Exactly. But I'm sure as a mother, because you have human beings to care for, it is super hard and challenging to find, like, okay, well, where do I fit the time in to fit an hour therapy session in, or to fit a bath in, you know, something as simple as that.
Maryssa, you should see I have this app that I just started using. I also write visual schedules for myself all over my whiteboards in my house. I literally have to write shower on my own list because I'm like, okay, I need to shower today. Like, this is disgusting, you know, but I mean, not that I'm rolling around in mud, but, you know.
Sorry, I didn't mean shower, like, you know, that's true too. I meant like a relaxing bath.
Yes.
But that too, I'm sure, is very, you know, basic necessity.
Yeah, exactly. And my showers, my really quick showers, they are self-care for me, honestly. Like, I'll stand in the shower just like, okay, this is my 5 minutes to myself, you know? So, I think, but that reminds me, that's one of my, when we get into it later, that's one of my strategies that I use for myself to help with, to help me live, like, a more role-balanced life.
Yes. But, no, that's awesome. I know. And like I said, not to get too much into, like, your relationship, but I think that's, you know, a big thing. And, you know, even transitioning into some of the goals of the study, right? To test whether work to family and family to work conflict were linked to profile membership. So they include membership as, like, identification within the work-oriented, parent-oriented, or role balance. So that is kind of the goal, right? Is to, like, have that balance. But they review kind of as a goal of, like, other personal and family characteristics and work conditions, right? So some in the study, not all of the women were had another partner. So that's a different dynamics. Being a single mom, which you mentioned, like, even not being a quote unquote single mom, but feeling like it at times. Right. So I'm sure, and they kind of follow this work resource model. And Sam and I were talking a little bit about the article, and so they kind of follow or reference this article, but they didn't explain it in too much detail. Right. So one thing I found when kind of searching for this work resource model was, like, they had really cool visuals, and they break down kind of the concepts of, like, mesosystems, microsystems within an individual and their, you know, kind of lifestyle. So they kind of broke down like macro resources as culture, social equality, wealth, public policies, and individuals' kind of association within these things. Objects and condition with marriage, employment. That was a big thing. It's like even having a partner who's employed or not, or maybe part-time, full-time, like those different dynamics that they incorporated. So we'll touch on that in a minute. But the last goal of the study was to test whether changes in the two forms of work-family conflict were linked to membership transitions, which you just talked about. You know, that shift, right? And you know, a parent working or a parent not, and then, you know, also navigating those dynamics of your relationship. So in the work resource model, they kind of analyze work-home conflict versus enrichments and the duties at home and the mesosystems of culture, marital status, and how they affect work and vice versa. So really what I kind of got from this model was, like, balance. How do you balance your lifestyle and enrich the lives of working mothers. So they kind of looked at it from like a business standpoint. How do companies support working mothers? That's a big thing too. Perceived time. That's how these kind of latent profiles were developed. Perceived time. If a mother has more support, maybe she doesn't feel as guilty being at work for 40 hours a week, right? And you know, there's just different kind of ins and outs of that.
Yeah, because, I was just going to say, even to, like, when I drop off my son, even this morning, dropping off my son with my dad, you know, it's like, maybe it's just a personal thing, but, like, I feel so guilty. Just like, oh, gosh, someone else has to take care of my child, you know? Like, and I don't know if it's because I've been fortunate enough to be home with him every day, you know, and like that's what I'm used to. It feels like I should be doing that, you know, but yeah, I was just going to say, like, even when you have support, sometimes it's still hard to let go of that guilt or that like responsibility, you know?
Wow. Yeah. I know that might be like, even to just not even prioritize work, right? But like, things that are valuable personally, you know, even if it's just like time to shop alone.
Yes.
I don't know if that's ever an option.
It has. I usually just let them like, hey, Mom, I need to run to Target. Like, can you just keep them for a few more minutes?
Yeah.
It's happened a few times.
Nice. So just kind of opening up some questions to you of, you know, I think you touched on it a little bit in your intro too of like, what does your home life look like? What was your life like pre-babies?
Oh my gosh. Well, pre-babies. Okay, so my husband, I'm in a biracial marriage. He is from Oakland, California. I'm from Livermore, California. We met in college, and we're best friends first. Fell in love, and then we have pre-baby life. I was going to go into my kids. I got my job as an RBT. It was before RBTs were a thing, though. I was I was an instructor
back in the old ages.
Yeah, in the old days. No, but I got this job, fell in love with it. I actually decided to continue the ABA path rather than go back to get my teaching credential because I wanted to be a kindergarten teacher. Okay. And anyways, I'm glad I made that decision. I still got a mix of kindergarten because I got to work in a school setting, and so I was still like very happy. I was working like nonstop though. Like I had lots of clients. I was living in Brentwood, traveling to Pleasanton, so I had a bit of a drive, but I didn't mind it because, you know. But then anyways, fast forward a little bit, I took a while to get my BCBA certification. It took me a few tries.
Same. Yeah. Multiple tests. Yeah. Multiple time test.
I have like severe test anxiety.
It's rough.
But then I got pregnant with my first son, and I still jokingly say it's because I had a second brain. I was growing a little human inside of me that I finally passed. So I was also very fortunate at my previous company, had great support system, supervisors, mentors, whatever you want to call them. And then, I became a mom and a BCBA at the same time, pretty much.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was talking a little bit about that with Brittany, our coworker, just how it's interesting because we have another coworker who was a seasoned BCBA, and now she's a mom, you know? So I was like, I wonder what her perspective is on all of this because, you know, my thought is like, okay, she's confident as a BCBA already, and now she's a mom. So like, yes, that's still scary, but hopefully she's feeling okay in her BCBA role, you know? And I kind of was just like, oh, this is new. Like, obviously I've been doing this job. It's not, my job isn't really changing. I just am now certified, you know, but just, you know how it is, like getting that. There's imposter syndrome. There's so many things that come with that certification. So I was trying to deal with all that. And then obviously, you know, here comes baby, which is a whole new world. So I was very fortunate to enjoy my leave. I took about 4 months of I think it was 4 months total of like my first maternity leave. Okay. Came back for a month, and then it was pandemic. And it was like a month or two, and then pandemic happened. But it was fine. It was fine. I don't know what else to say about the pandemic. It was glad it's over. We got through it. Yeah. So I think I feel like I'm rambling, like going on.
No, yeah. And it was really just about like what your life was like pre-babies, or even kind of relating to that, since you did touch on like those personal aspects. Where would you identify yourself if you had to put yourself in a worker profile before versus now?
Yeah, that's a good way to ask it, because I was struggling trying to place myself now. Mm-hmm. I think before I was definitely more work-life balanced. No, sorry. I would say I was pretty I had a pretty balanced role. Uh-huh. Yeah, I was happy with like my work. I was working a lot, but because I didn't have kids, I didn't have a lot of like personal life conflict happening. You know, it was like exciting things, you know, like I was getting ready to get married and I was getting ready to go on a honeymoon, and then obviously your first baby's it's really exciting, you know. So I think those were all very exciting life events, you know, whereas now my life is still great. I'm enjoying being a mom, you know, it's the best thing ever, but it's just a lot of more responsibility, obviously, you know, and then now with, you know, Marcus's new role, it's just, I feel that everything is on my shoulders, you know, and it's like, whereas he was carrying most of the load, like I was just, and I was like, you know, just, I feel like almost now, like I've become good cop and bad cop, you know, and it's like where I felt like I could be both, but because Marcus was more present, you know, it was like I didn't feel so much like the bad one.
So do you identify, you think, more as like parent?
Yeah, I would say I'm more now. I would say I'm more. Let's see. I don't know why this is
parent-oriented, work-oriented.
Yeah, I would say I'm more parent-oriented now, for sure. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad, you know, I think that's, in my eyes, that's a great thing. And I think I'm able to get to that point because of Joyscape. Like, I don't know where I would be if, like, Brenna didn't offer the job, you know, or,
the option,
you know, that she needed an admin person, you know. So I think it was a very, it was a blessing in disguise for me to get to where I am today. And yeah, I'm very happy that I'm in a parent-oriented life right now.
Yeah. And I think it's important. I wanted to touch on that too, since you were talking a little bit about like what your role is now and how that's, you know, you feel grateful to have kind of the position, the flexibility that you have now. And you mentioned earlier too that you got to like take maternity leave. Can you share some of the things that you did feel, because that's later they talk about strategies, right? What can companies do to support working mothers? So what did your company, you feel like, do when you were in your pregnancy and kind of that preparation for your leave, and then also like now with the company you're with and that flexibility and schedule, but still feel supported and that you can still tap into your clinical piece? So what did that support look like pre-baby and post-baby?
So for both pregnancies were at my old company, and for both of them I was given all of the benefits I required, you know. They were great with that. I took the full 4 weeks before the birth, because little tip, if you ever have a baby, you don't get to add those weeks to your maternity leave at the end, so it's kind of like use them or lose them type of leave. But it was recommended by my doctor to take those, so I took them. And then the company was just basically, you know, made sure I had everything set up for my pay, you know, for my for the disability pay. I'm trying to think of what else specifically. Like,
you mentioned supervision.
Yeah,
too.
They were so amazing, like with everything. I was really fortunate to have. I feel like I want to like name drop them, but I don't want to embarrass them. No, I had one supervisor who I kind of say was like my work mom at the time. Like, she left and I cried about it. You know, like, she was amazing. I think just having like a person to vent to really was like the support that they gave me and I needed, because at the time I wasn't going to therapy. Probably should have been. But yeah, I think it was just the just like, I don't know what else to call it other than just support they gave me as just like human beings, you know, like they were, it wasn't like I was just at this company, you know, it was like, these were friends, I get, like, I don't, like, they're my friends and like my mentors, and they were going to make sure that like I was okay,
No, that's awesome. It's important, and I'm glad you talk about that too, because oftentimes, a lot of ABA companies don't have centers. I think that, it is a pro and a con in some aspects, but even with us having the center now, we do get a better sense of community, because we see each other. We could put a face to the name, or, I know we have virtual monthly meetings, but it's not the same, when you're in person. And so the fade out from the pandemic is also a transition. So I can't imagine also, being a mom and trying to navigate some of that stuff. I'm still in shock that you became a mom at the same time you became a BCBA. I mean, kudos to you for the studying process. Like, you're pregnant studying.
I had to take a few medical leaves. Like, I'm not gonna lie, it was rough. It was...
No, but that is real life, you know, even for our audience, because there's probably people who are trying to do that, or maybe put it on pause because they are pregnant, and maybe they feel like, they just don't have the capacity, and that's okay.
Yeah. Well, I remember when I was taking, what is it called? Pass the big ABA exam. Yeah. And I love that lady, Dana, I think is her name. But I remember it was our first meeting, and she jokingly said, "Oh, if you're pregnant, this is not the time to do this. You need to reevaluate." And I think maybe she meant it, but like she kind of said it jokingly, and I got so nervous. I started crying. I had to like turn my camera off. I was just like, "Oh my gosh, I have to redo. I can't do this now."
Yeah.
And then I like turn my camera back on, like, okay, don't freak out, like just because she said this, like, doesn't mean you can't do it, and I just worked my butt off, and luckily passed that time.
No, that's awesome. Like I said, I think you bring such a unique perspective for the audience, and even for me, right? It's just to understand, like, man, it also humbles me of like, okay, I don't have, two human beings to look out for. Like, maybe I can do it. I can reprioritize, or, it also just helps prepare, because I do want a family, one day. And I think just even hearing some of your experience and the reality of some of the emotions, right? The trials and tribulations, but also like the tribulations, of like our relationship is thriving, or, how kids can also really enhance your life. And like you mentioned, you love your littles.
I'm obsessed with them. Like I literally drop off Maverick at daycare, and I'm like, should I pick him up early today? But then I'm like, okay, no, I should actually give one-on-one time to Sterling, because like it's like crazy how much like battles I go through like in my everyday life just with my own children,
And they talk about that in the article, right? A lot of it is the perception of time is also pushed from society. I think we live in a society, it's like work, live to work.
Yep.
Versus work to live.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that is a really key piece. Is like all those emotions you're going through are probably super normal for moms. I can't speak, but I know for me, even hearing, they're normal, and sometimes it is like that battle. You feel so torn one way and so torn the other.
Yeah, honestly, working with some when I do parent training with some of our clients, until I became a mom. Like, I heard a mom say this before, and I was like, oh, yeah, right. Like, I can relate to moms without being a mom, is how I felt. Like, I can still I can still empathize with them, and I can still create goals that are not going to be, like, too much for them to do when they have other life things going on, But then I became a mom, and I was just like, wow, like, I didn't realize, like, how hard it is to present a visible schedule before we leave the house every time, because I use that. Yeah, I use that I do that with Maverick. He's not on the spectrum, but I still have found that visual schedules help him transition, like myself. And so, but I tried to use a visual schedule with him for, I was consistently using it for maybe, like, 2 weeks, which is still impressive, I would say. Like, 2 weeks, that was pretty consistent. But it wasn't enough to, like, create the habit for me. Like, it still was just easier for me to do something else, and, but it's crazy. Like, I do notice how much it affects him when I don't present it, like, it really helps him. So I think even that, like, I'm noticing it's really hard to turn my BCBA brain off and not implement things on my own children. And so, like, I was talking to my therapist about it, actually. Like, that's one of the things I want to learn to do is, like, although I have these really cool tools in my head, and like how to implement things to make everyone's life, like, to make people's life easier and help them be more independent, like, it's hard to, like, always be thinking about other people,
Oh.
So it's like, and I think about my mom all the time, because she, was a nurse. Well, she's retired. She's retired now, but she was a registered nurse. And so when I was reading this article, I was like, oh, think about a lot about my mom. You know, just like, okay, this was her. She was a registered nurse. She came home to 3 kids. They talk
about that fatigue, right? In the article of just like, it's a possibility that it was a factor of like providing direct care to others in your day-to-day job.
Yeah.
And that transition back to home does affect, right? Yeah. So it also looked at a population that does direct care, which added a unique aspect, like you were talking about with your mom.
Yeah, I was talking to her about it because she used to take care of terminally ill children in the hospital, and then come
home
to take care of us. And it's just like, I was asking her, like, how did you do that? Like, you were, what would you do if you lost a patient and then you had to come home to like your kids? She's like, I would just hold you guys tighter. You know? Sorry. But yeah, so I think she was probably 100% work oriented, but she wanted to be parent oriented.
Yeah.
You know? Or I don't know. Knowing her, she wanted to take care of everyone. But
Aww. Where's your mom? You should. We need it. Yeah. No, we need her on the podcast too. She's actually, wow, that's a cool.
Yeah, she's working right now. Actually, she's retired, but she got rehired to monitor COVID vaccines. So yeah, she's still taking care of people. But yeah, anyways, I just thought it's just crazy, just because these people in the study, like the nurses, it seems like, based off what we read, you know, like they had probably 0 time for self-care, you know. And I think going back to what you asked about the company, like I think my previous company really tried to make sure we were taking care of ourselves, but like most companies I feel do, but I think, again, going back to just like us as BCBAs, like you don't want to leave your clients hanging. You don't want to like take a day off because what if like they have what if something intense happens that day and like you weren't there to provide support, you know, like again, probably a personal thing that I'm feeling so guilty, but like I think it's like you said earlier, it's a real thing. It's a valid emotion, you know?
Yes, absolutely. So let's transition into Sam has a fun code word for us for the CE today. Go ahead, Sam.
Yes, the code word is going to be Spider-Man.
Sure.
Yeah, it is always in my mind because both of the boys are obsessed with him. So Spider-Man is the word.
All right. So kind of shifting into the findings of the research. So one of the things they found was that an increase in conflict at home led to workers identifying more on the work-oriented profile, which we discussed this a little bit earlier, of, you know, when conflict is occurring at home, do you lean into work a little bit more? And, you know, because this might not apply to everybody, but I thought it was interesting, you know, because, and kind of like I posed the question of, oh, is this some escape maintained behavior going on here? Some escape avoidance. So yeah, what are your thoughts on just kind of touching on it, if this finding resonates with you personally or not?
Yeah, so I think, I personally can't really escape the whatever whatever's going on at home, but to engage in that avoidance behavior. But I definitely do think when I was at my previous company, I was engaging in a lot of escape avoidance behavior to, for example, like wrapping up session notes, because I wanted to spend time with my boys who were outside of the bedroom, my office door, you know, so like I was definitely engaging in escape, maintained behavior to get out of that work, just so I could, like I said, spend some more time with my family. So I could definitely see, like, on the other hand, if you were having a lot of family, stuff going on, that you would just want to maybe dive into a report and just start, put that BCBA hat on and just forget about whatever is happening, in your family life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And just to also kind of add in that, I know I shared, my mom is disabled. She had a stroke a few years ago. She's actually moving into my new place with me. So I'm very excited. But, there is also a little bit of, I know for me, just through the course of the 5 years, it has been challenging. She's gone through chemo, and we've dealt with also making a routine for her. So even just coming from a caregiver perspective,
you are caretaking.
It is gonna be a shift though. So I'm also going through a transition where I do hope to. Right now I strongly identify as a worker.
Oh yeah, you are a hard. You're always working.
I know, and it's not good, but also I give myself a lot of guilt for that. Like you mentioned, it resonated with me when you discussed the guilt you feel just as a mother. Even for me, like, I know personally, I need time for myself.
Yes.
I need to be better at setting boundaries for myself.
Yeah.
And that's nobody else's responsibility except my own. And so even just caring for my mother on the weekends has been hard. So, you know, my sister is a really big support for me. And I know you mentioned family.
Yeah.
Having that family is super crucial for me. But also remembering that it's no one else's responsibility to take care of me right now.
Yeah.
And so, you know, like you mentioned, kind of like that transition and leaning into when there's conflict. So like when I'm really stressed at home or with things, you know, my mom has a lot of doctor's appointments and, you know, there's just a lot of things going on. I do notice that like my perception of time is like, Maryssa, you have to do all these things for work. You have this on your to-do list. And then, you know, I'm like, but am I spending time with my mom?
Yeah.
You know, maybe we're on, you know, we don't know what's the status of her, you know, condition and in terms of like how long she might have. So that is like, oh man, I resonate with what you feel as a mother, but even for me being a caretaker for my mother is that perception of time. So sometimes I do notice that my mental isn't right, you know, where it's like emotionally, do I have the capacity to be there, be present with her? And then sometimes, you know, if we have we bicker, and then I notice like, okay, I need to go work on my report. I'm going to go to Panera and hop on the internet and give us some space. So I notice for me, this does resonate when I'm thinking about, you know, just like family conflict or stress. I lean into work because that's like security. That's a coping mechanism, which I support having it as a coping mechanism in some respects. But when it's not balanced and it's an escape, that's when it becomes, okay, are we too dependent on this and not exercising some of those coping skills? So,
And I just want to say too that, like, just hearing you say that, like, it's no one else's responsibility to take care of myself right now, like, that's an obvious statement, but just hearing you say that, I was like, I don't know. It just is kind of like, I feel like it's kind of like a tough love statement almost. Like that some people like need to hear, you know? Like, I think a lot of times, like me personally, I get wrapped up in my like, problems, I guess. Like I don't know if this is oversharing, but I just got diagnosed with OCD and, specifically a form of it called trichotillomania. And it's really intense. And I was like a little embarrassed about it for a while, like still kind of am. But it's basically it's a hair pulling disorder. And it's so I get like stress or anxiety and it's like a cycle. I start pulling my hair and not really noticing it. But and it's I have like bald spots. And anyways, I am noticing that it's just been like a personal issue like my whole life, you know, that I didn't really that wasn't really interfering with my life too much until now. But
okay, so you've had this? Okay.
Yeah, and so my doctor is telling me like, oh yeah, see, that was OCD, but it looks like you phased out of it on your own. Like all these little patterns of behavior that I had. But anyways, like I self-diagnosed myself with this, and it was cool because I was like able to do that. You know, I was like, okay, why am I pulling my hair? It's automatically reinforcing, obviously, you know, like, cause it's not like I'm like, oh, look at this bald spot. Yes, that's what I want. You know, it's not like that's why I'm doing it. But I do notice when my hair comes out, I get this like feeling in my body, like almost like a runner's high. It's like endorphins almost. And so, I'm using it as it's become a coping mechanism somehow. And not a really great coping mechanism. So that's why I'm, happy that I'm deciding to take that responsibility and take care of myself and, you know, get treatment for it. So no, that's good. Thank you for sharing. You know, and like I mentioned, I think the reality of us having different lives, but we manage things, right? Individuals, and even talking about your automatically reinforced behavior, you know, just to kind of take it back to the kiddos that we work with, the population that we work with, right? And really understanding you're able to articulate that, right? So what sits with me is just like, wow, it gives perspective to understanding when we are working with mothers, when we are working with the children, parents even, right? Parents even, and children with autism, of understanding, you know, like how to manage that is really, it's so complex, you know, and you mentioned earlier about the visual schedule, and even though you know it works, the consistency of it.
It's right. And so again, everyday behaviors, everyday life, even though we all have our different stories. So thank you so much for opening up and sharing that. just kind of transitioning, like the findings were that work demands negatively influenced families through loss of personal resources. So I think that's kind of an obvious, but it is interesting, to hear like, we talk about like, what is the resolution, and companies being aware of this. So that's why I thought it was a really cool experience that you felt well supported when you were pregnant. Yeah. Because time resource, it is a big thing, and those work demands are real. They come and they go, but so is home life, right? Home life demands kind of play its toll too. So the findings that time resources were rather a predictor and not an outcome of family conflict and individuals' ability to show balance between work and parenting roles. So I know you already kind of touched on a little bit of that balance. So there's many things to consider, but I wonder if education might also correlate between those boundaries, and being able to advocate for yourself, recognize your needs, not just understand like how to do it, but like, do you recognize that there's a need? Like you mentioned, that self-reflection is huge, and are we at a place to say, okay, I see the problem, I know how to fix it, or I know how to get the help I need, So that's really important, and keep up with the demands. I think sometimes we stay in this like survival mode, go, and we don't sit, and sometimes those like uncomfortable emotions, that's something I've also learned, even just through therapy, right? And being able to process my role as Maryssa, my role as a BCBA, because those are different, my role as a daughter to my mother, and just different things, right? But I think sometimes that role division and splitting not just our time, but also understanding like we are at the forefront, And you mentioned a lot on some of the limitations of the study. I know we mentioned this study focused on 440 employed moms, but you had some good points on the limitations if you want to touch on that, Sam.
Yes, let's see. Oh yeah, I just mentioned that, it was all mothers, so I would like to see the same study completed with fathers, or even, same-sex marriages, or marriages specifically with swap gender roles, because I kind of think at first that's how me and Marcus were. He was kind of like always home, taking the kids to, taking them to wherever. He got off at like 3, so he got to pick Mav up from school, and but now it's obviously very different. Now he's the work. I'm always home. But yeah, I think it would be really interesting just to see just perspective from fathers too. Because I think society has painted a picture of what fathers should be, and just like mothers, and so I think it would just be interesting to hear it from their perspective. And then I also don't know if this isn't a limitation, but I just thought it was interesting that the work-oriented group, it said that they had less education, and so for some reason when I was reading this article, I was thinking work-oriented, those are workaholics, people who maybe are like CEOs who never want to leave the office, type of thing, or maybe they want to but never leave the office, and so it was just interesting. I was like, oh, okay, so this might actually be nurses who or people who need to work this much,
work multiple jobs.
Yes, they have to work it, or else they maybe will not have money to feed the kid. So
it's almost a sacrifice between actually I don't have a choice to spend time with my kids, because in order to provide for them, I need to work 12-hour plus shifts.
Exactly. So I was reading it, and it kind of like checked me. I was like, oh, this is a little privilege check. Like I'm privileged. Like as much as I'm stressed out about my life, like I still have the ability and the privilege to change my jobs, and so it was kind of like a humble
and even they mentioned like work schedules, flexibility with their work schedules, time off, sick time even, right, things like that.
That's definitely which reminds me, that's one of the supports that both companies, my previous and the new one, like that was one of the strategies, I guess you could say, that did help me find that balance, was shifting to part-time. Again, a privilege that I was able to do that, but shifting to part-time just so I could literally not have, I was not supposed to be working those hours anymore, so like I was able to reallocate that time with whatever I wanted to do.
With you, with what you prioritize, which was your family, And so they kind of go into like things to do to help build more balance for working mothers and parenting and home life. And so a lot of it was quality time and the interaction. So the quality of the interactions does matter. And the structural changes within the workplace to help promote perceived time adequacy to support single mothers, multi-caregiving responsibilities, and etc. And to decrease work-family conflict, to promote flexibility in work arrangement, and increase supervisor support for family and personal life. So I kind of did a little note here of like how to be a good supervisor in our field. There's so many things.
Yes.
But a lot of that too is like recognizing where that individual comes from. What is their home life without being too personal, because some people, want to create that line. But if it does, it does affect how we work, the lens we see it through, right? So just kind of understanding. So as we go into last thoughts, just kind of interesting concepts of perceived time and societal pressures, which I feel like we did a good job touching on today, and how they play a role with mothers and how they perceive their time with their children. And you already touched on it, that guilt factor, right, to consider. So how does society affect your inner view of yourself as a mother and a working mother at that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, me personally, I base a lot of my time perception, like, on Maverick mostly, but his emotions. Like, if he's really, like, emotionally unstable, I guess I could say, like, I feel like he needs more of my time. He's only 3.5.
Temperament.
So, exactly. Yeah. So it's like, I really tap into how they're feeling, because I feel like they wear their emotions, right? Our toddlers. So it's like, I can kind of, like, if dad's been gone for a while, like, I know that he's missing him, like, if I'm missing him, he's missing him 10 times more. So, I guess that's pretty much what it is. I think I look at, like, Instagram or look at other social media things, and I see, people post good things of their kids. I do this. I'm very guilty of it. You post what you want people to see,
Yes.
And so I see, so-and-so's kids are always happy all the time, and I'm just like, and, my kids are too. They're not, I feel like I'm making it seem like they're miserable, but they...
No, but that comparison.
Yeah,
though,
exactly.
Right? Like, are they always happy?
Yes.
Like...
And so, I think maybe it's, that's what I personally do, but...
Some of those societal pressure. I mean, social media is huge right now.
Yes.
Not right now. It's been, right? We're just going into that era. But I think, like, for us... in our 30s, even just seeing that shift, and to see, like, because we are on our phones and we're scrolling and we see all these lives, and you're right, we post what we want people to see. So I'm sure, like, I wasn't thinking about social media initially, but I'm glad you brought that up, because that's what we see nowadays, period. Yeah.
And also, sorry to cut you off, I just got excited. Literally yesterday, I was at gymnastics with Maverick, and I saw this mom. She was doing amazing. Like, I wanted to, like, record her, because she was amazing. I was like, you're, like, my model right now. She was validating her son's, like, feelings. He, like, had put his hands on another kid in the class, not aggressively, just as kids do. Like, I think Maverick did it to him too. But she was touching his chest just very gently, like, hey, I saw you put your hands on another person's body, like, did you do that because you were upset? Like, she was asking him, like, these questions, and I was like, wow, like just that question alone, like, you're, like, making sure he's okay first, like, which is awesome. Like, I think if he would have physically hurt this person, she maybe would have changed her approach. Yeah. But I was just recognizing, like, how calm she was being with her son, and so that alone, I was like, wow, why can't I be like that? Like, why? I'm supposed to be teaching other parents to do that with their children, but I can't do that with my own, like...
that's the BCBA.
Yes, exactly.
That over-analyzing.
All the time. So I literally, Maryssa, getting into our strategies, like, I, going back to my whiteboards in my house, I literally will write on my whiteboard, like, in big, bold expo marker, breathe before you talk. Like, because I don't want to yell at my kids. No one wants to, and luckily I don't that often, but because I don't that often, I think when I do, it's like, why did I do that? Like, it just, like, it hurts me.
The emotional regulation of, like, and that I mean, uncomfortable feelings. Sorry, I was, like, trying to find my words, because I feel your emotions, and I think that, I feel your emotions. That's a good tact, right? Of like, I can imagine what it feels like with your kiddos, you know, your children, and being able to navigate that kind of in, like, how do I regulate myself to help regulate them?
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
But yeah, so I follow, again, going back to Instagram, I follow a lot of good pages that promote, you know, just like parent training, stuff like that. And so I think it would probably be healthy for me to stop looking at them, because I am constantly holding myself to that, like, I want to be like that type of thing, you know? But I know I'm doing a good job. I know I got to recognize that more, but it's just hard with society, you know, like with all of the, stigmas that society creates. So
yeah, you are doing a good job.
Thank you.
So that's a good question though too, is like, what do you use for support?
Family, 100%. Yeah. Family is probably my biggest. Therapy now. What else? Yeah, I think honestly, family is my biggest support system. I wouldn't be able to do, like today, I wouldn't be able to be here if my dad wasn't able to watch Sterling, you know? And so, yeah, I mean, I know you would have loved to have Sterling here. But,
yes, I would.
But even friends, I do feel lonely a lot because don't live close to my, like, core group of friends. Also, none of my core group of friends have kids, so I am very isolated in that aspect. But I did just, like, make a new mom friends. I'm like seeing things in, like, a more positive light now.
Yes.
But
how do you network there? Like, even for our listeners who are moms who feel that same, like, loneliness kind of sometimes, even with or without a partner, right?
Yeah.
Like, how do you network? Even get the energy to network.
Yeah, I know. Actually, Maverick so he became best friends with this little girl at school, and he's like a social butterfly. Like, he is definitely little Marcus. Like, little Marquis is what everyone calls him. But anyways, he became best friends with this little girl, and I got the courage to send the mom an invite to his birthday party. And she came, and we, like, hit it off, actually. Like, I was just, like, I told her, and, like, I feel like I can be very open with her, and that's not something that I've really found since, like, my high school best friend, you know? And so it's been really cool. Like, we both have admitted to each other that, like, it's just easy to talk to you, you know? Like, I think we're going through a lot of the same
So maybe that too for our audience, right? Of just like finding your people, I think is always a kind of a theme.
Yes.
Even just, you know, for me too, as a single person, like finding your people who you vibe with, right?
Yeah.
Or who you feel you can connect with. Because I have friends who are, you know, have like 14-year-old kids, but I also have friends who are pregnant right now, like a handful of kiddos who are friends who are pregnant. But yeah, just kind of going back to like finding your people and those supports that can keep you afloat when some days you're not feeling your best.
Yeah.
Good. Anything else to add, Sam? We're so happy to have you and your lens that you see things through, and it's so unique, and I know it definitely resonated with me, and I know it will with our audience too. But anything to add?
No, I mean, I would love to come back. I know we talked about having a further discussion, maybe on another article. I found another one. I should have put the title, but I didn't. But I'll send that to you so we can maybe talk about that.
We'll put it in the show notes too.
Oh, there you go. And along with another mom BCBA that we have at Joyscape who expressed some interest in coming on the podcast.
Awesome.
But no, this has been fun. I think I'm really enjoying, probably because of my therapy, I'm enjoying talking about my quote unquote issues, you know, and hey, if I found a strategy that can help me, I want to be able to help anyone, you know. So.
Yes. No, I love it. Great. Okay, so our last keyword for today will be cold brew. Cold brew. That's awesome. 2 words. Yes. Cold brew. I love it. So yeah, please take advantage of our CEUs. Check us out at joyscape.com. If you are interested in getting CE credit, please email us with the keywords included in this episode at podcast@joyscapetherapy.com. Stay tuned for our future episodes. We're on Apple Podcast and Spotify, and check us out on our socials as well. Joyscape Therapy. Thank you so much, and that's a wrap on our 5th episode. Bye.